How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Jesse Garcia. Jesse's a vice chair of the Republican Party and county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. And with us is our special guest, Eric Levine, noted attorney, political commentator, and essayist. I want to begin, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I want to begin, gentlemen, by talking about something that just hit the pages today and is one of the most important cases that will ever be decided by the New York Court of Appeals. And I respectfully submit that the future of the country may be at stake because of this decision. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the redistricting case. A challenge was brought to the lines that were drafted for the congressional lines. The way it works under the state constitution, the way it's supposed to work, the way it was done by the earlier Court of Appeals case, it was perfectly clear as a matter of statutory law, constitutional law, and Court of Appeals decision that those lines were supposed to last for the full 10 years of the census. It was challenged, and the lines were protected as drafted by the state Supreme Court. Just today it was overturned in a 3-2 decision. This case will go to the New York Court of Appeals. Now, why is this important? Number one, the people challenging the lines are acting contrary to the will of the people, contrary to the state constitution. The legislature has no role in challenging this. These are the lines that need to last for the 10 years. Why is that important? Because all the scandals coming out of the Biden administration, all the corrupt influence peddling deals, all the bad faith of certain actors in the FBI and the United States Department of Justice and amongst U.S. attorneys, is all being exposed because the majority of the United States House of Representatives is controlled by the Republicans, and they have legislative investigation and oversight power to expose this. If the Democrats controlled both houses of the Congress, the Senate and the House, we would never get to the truth of this matter. And God forbid that this case leads to a Democratic takeover of the House, all the truth will be suppressed. America's future is at stake based on this case. It's not an exaggeration to say that. Eric, what say you?
Well, one of the interesting things about the case regarding the people who were challenging the lines that were drawn, the congressional lines that were drawn, is that they're the same people who set their hair on fire every time they claim there's gerrymandering in the South or in other states that benefit Republicans. These lines were drawn, they were not gerrymandered. They were specifically drawn in a constitutional way to make sure there was no gerrymandering. So what these people are suing to do, and this court is permitting them to do, is to say, you are permitted to gerrymander. So it just, the irony of it is quite delicious. But I think it goes beyond just the investigations and the truth coming out about Hunter Biden and the potential and probable corruption of Joe Biden. It's just generally speaking that we don't want a one-party country. It's really quite dangerous. Divided government is probably far more effective. But certainly you don't want the radical left in charge of the country. If the progressives are successful in taking the House and Republicans fail to take the Senate, and Joe Biden holds on in the White House, and if Donald Trump's the nominee, that's very, very probable, then the country as we know it is probably over. We will have 51 states. Washington, D.C. will become a state, which makes for a Democratic Senate majority in perpetuity. You'll have a packed court. We'll go from 9 Supreme Court justices until they get as many justices they need to
pack the court.
To pack the court to get whatever decisions they need. And the country will effectively become woke. It's a real problem. So we really I don't know that the Supreme Court would have any role in this decision because it's generally leaving it to the states to draw their lines. It may have a role on the 10-year issue because that's how I think the Constitution is provided once the census is done. But there's some great dangers here. But I'm really quite taken by the irony of the exact same people who are all hysterical about gerrymandering when it benefits Republicans are actually suing to allow themselves to gerrymander.
Jesse, your take, because you're the political expert in this room, and as you see this, what's the impact?
The impact here is, as we go forward, I think both of you are absolutely correct. And for New York, what it means for the country. Let's understand that the progressives now control, the left coast and the East Coast in California and New York, especially here in both cases where there was one-party rule, and we see the statuses of those states. But looking here specifically, and I'm going to leave my first question actually last, because I think the listeners need to be educated by two lawyers in this. This is nothing more than the continuation of, and I think Judge, you set it forth. It's reversing the will of the people. This is legalized gerrymandering, as Eric has pointed out, but these Democrats have been weaponizing the electoral system for their benefit for the last 2 years, if not 3 years, because every time that there's been a measure put before the voters on redistricting, on absentee ballots, or changing the election procedures in the state of New York, they've been rejected overwhelmingly by the voters. What they do now, the Democrats, because they can't win on policy, they can't win on ideas, they're going to change the rules of the game. We've seen that with moving elections to even years elections to hurt local governments and hurt local voters on their local issues. We've seen this on where we've rejected absentee ballots, unfettered absentee ballots at the constitutional level through referendum statewide. So what did they come back? They came back with legislation. Instead of absentee ballot, they call it mail-in ballot. This goes on and on. This is an ongoing power trip and power grab by Generis and the progressive Democrats in Albany and in New York City. These are power brokers who want to hold on to their power because they've seen what happened in 2022 when the people of New York, the common sense New Yorkers, rise up and go to the ballot box to reject their policies. Now, my question to you, I'm not a lawyer, and I saw that I believe the decision was in the third department was 3-2, which is going to go to 3-2, which is a little bit of a hope there. My hope is that the faith we saw in the Court of Appeals a year ago, which led to the dismissal, basically the dismissal of a chief judge of the Court of Appeals and the replacement of the chief judge there for political purposes. But as a layman, it's my understanding that this case is law. It was already litigated. It was already went through the judicial system. It's already been pronounced and ruled upon by the highest court in the state. Maybe the two of you could explain to the listeners, how do these progressive left Democrats gerrymander, utilize the system, game the system to go back and get another bite at the apple after they picked their own judges for this one purpose?
Well, courts always have the right to overturn their decisions. Let's look at the Dodd decision. They overturned Roe v. Wade, right? Brown versus Board overturned Plessy.
Eric, but isn't this case, though, it went last year, the courts ruled what these lines should be. It went through the entire judicial system, and then the lines were set. They were set by, I believe, by a special master and then put into place. So how can they get another bite at the apple if the congressional lines and the Senate lines were already set and ruled upon a year ago?
A court always has the power to reverse itself.
The argument is that, and this I don't believe they're correct. Their argument is there was an open question whether or not these lines were for a 2-year period or for a 10-year period. So the argument
that's basically my question.
Right. So they're making that argument that it was not clear, therefore it has to be clarified.
But even if they didn't get to that decision, a court always has the power to reverse itself.
And Jesse, I think Eric is right on that. But that's the substance of their argument, that it wasn't clear whether it's 2 years or 10 years. But I do believe, Jesse, you're absolutely correct. Everybody knew at the time that they were talking about 10 years. That when the census comes out, you're drafting lines for the whole life of that census. And that's what's different. That's what they're trying to cut out from this consideration. And it's very dangerous. And it's very, very dangerous indeed. Remember what the result was on the original lines. The Republicans would be totally marginalized, gerrymandered out, so they would have no more than 4 seats in the United States House of Representatives in the Congress. Okay? And when it turned around, and it was legitimately turned around, that power grab was turned around, that gerrymandering was turned around by a special master, ratified by the courts, as you correctly point out, then they went up to, what was it, 11 seats, Jesse?
Yes, 11.
Okay.
It defines, the New York delegation is the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats controlling the House.
No doubt about it.
Plain and simple.
And as Eric correctly points out, the stakes, God forbid that the Court of Appeals does the wrong thing here and doesn't reverse this appellate division decision. And they were faced with gerrymandered lines coming down for next year in 2024 in a presidential year, where the party bases come out, and the Democrats have a lot more in their party base in New York City and New York State than Republicans. And that's why you have a one-party state. God forbid that happens. It raises the stake, as Eric has constantly pointed out, to have the Republicans win the United States Senate. Otherwise, this country is doomed to have a one-party government. They will put Puerto Rico in. They will put District of Columbia in. They'll pack it with 2 to 4 more United States senators. So you have in perpetuity a House that is going to be governed for the next decade by Democrats, and a Senate which will be governed in perpetuity by Democrats. This is a terrible situation. One-party government is the very definition of tyranny. And if we care about this, and the Democrats are always crying about they're for democracy, well, let the record be clear that the voters voted to turn down gerrymandering and the gambits by Democrats, and the special master and the Court of Appeals and all the other courts that faced it a couple of years ago did the right thing in the lines. Enough is enough. The problem is the people like Chinaris and the other radical leftists in the state legislature who are behind this litigation. They're absolutely shameless in their grab for power.
But that's the fundamental problem. The argument can be made if you have a center-left Democratic Party or center-right Republican Party take control of the country for a period of time. Not so terrible, because the difference between the two parties, there's a difference, but not so dramatic that the country veers off the edge. The danger here is that the radical progressive left, the woke left, is dominating the Democratic Party and running the Democratic Party. And if they have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, truly the country we know and love is finished.
Okay. Final word on this topic, Jesse?
I just, I think that, I saw the reports, and as our lawyers are going through it, I know that there have been conversations, as we discussed before we got on air, with the state party and John Faso, who's been leading this effort on this issue. He has expressed hope that the Court of Appeals will reaffirm the position and overturn this decision. I don't like leaving things to hope. I don't think anybody with something this important and this grand should ever leave something for hope. So it's my desire, and I think it's important that we rally the people, because it's the people's will that's being basically suppressed here and reversed for pure political power and influence of a small group.
Marxists don't care about the will of the people, period.
This is true.
They use the narrative that they're working for the people and they care about the people, but it's all about power and control. I want to raise, we have a few minutes left in this first segment. I want to raise the issue of Ben and Jerry's once again playing ideological games. And my question to both of you gentlemen is, why can't they just stick to making ice cream? I mean, what is wrong with them when they go out and they say that they're on July 4th weekend, that they're committed to having the government of the United States giving back territory to so-called Native Americans? And by the way, don't they realize that their very factory in Vermont is on tribal land? Jesse, what do you think about that?
Number one, I just think that Ben and Jerry's, like many of these woke companies, are just hypocrites. As you pointed it out, they're making these comments about returning properties to the indigenous nation and such, but they themselves their factory sits on that property. But just specifically on July 4th, the tweet that has been the latest uproar is this July 4th. It's high time we recognize that the U.S. exists on stolen indigenous land and should commit to returning it. This is just one of a number of different woke agenda points that Ben & Jerry's has used its corporate brand and its corporate platform for the purposes of trying to influence, policy here. They've spoken out against the United States transferring and assisting the Ukrainian army with arms. They've pulled out of selling items and their products out of occupied Palestinian territories. And you know what? Even back in I'm not a big fan of the New York Times or the mainstream media, but even in February 2023, this is where the hypocrisy comes in. The New York Times investigation accused Ben & Jerry's and 3 other corporations of allegedly exploiting migrant children. I have this problem with corporations trying to influence policy, influence agendas that are not within basically their business structure. I have a problem when entertainers and athletes do that. When I go to a movie, when I go to a play, or if I go to an event, I want to be entertained. It's a way for me to get away from the noise of politics and agenda and divisiveness. It's for me to be entertained, and many, many hundreds of families and thousands of families to be entertained and get away from the mirage of all this, politics and agenda items and such. It's time for relaxation. I think this is a problem with them, but more importantly, it's their hypocrisy. I think that they're very close, and they really should already be there. They should be having their Bud Light moment. And we can see that now burgeoning up, where there is a boycott. Consumers are using their power, the power of their purse, to determine whether or not they should, support a company that does not support America or what it stands for. Basically, they're saying that America is not exceptional. It's something that the left has embodied for decades. It's something that the Biden administration touts. It's an attack on the American exceptionalism and the American way of life and our life and liberty. So I think this is a slippery slope for them. I hope that finally, that after this long list of their woke pronunciations, that the American people finally take out their ire on their positions.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed friend and guest Eric Levine, political commentator, essayist, and attorney. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, and renowned essayist, political commentator, and attorney Eric Levine. Eric, you just came out with this spectacular article about how the Biden administration is playing to the domestic constituency, the left-wing progressive constituency, by subverting and threatening Israel, giving comfort to the Iranians and the other enemies of freedom around the world by cutting off technological innovation and research in certain alleged occupied territories. Would you tell us about this, please?
Yeah, sure. So the Biden administration last week announced that it's no longer going to support scientific and technical research of Israeli institutions in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. And it claims that the reason they're doing that is because, one, they want to advance or don't want to do anything to undermine the two-state solution, and they don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize or pass policy of challenging the areas which came under the administration of Israel after 1967 and which remain subject to the final status negotiations. And they claim that is inconsistent with U.S. foreign policy. It's inane. For the first part, let's assume for a moment they really do care about the Palestinians, and they don't care a whit. They want to make claim to the two-state solution. Nobody believes a two-state solution is viable. Nobody. The Arab countries, whether it's Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, the UAE, Morocco, they all made peace with Israel without having a Palestinian state established. And they all oppose the creation of a Palestinian state because they correctly believe it will become a terrorist haven. It will be dominated by Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, other Iranian-backed terrorist proxies, and they're all descendants of the Muslim Brotherhood, who they believe are direct threats to their regimes. So if the first governments that the Palestinian state comes after is our Arab allies, and then they turn their attention to the Israelis. So the Arabs are against it. The Palestinians themselves are against it. Hamas will not recognize a Jewish state, and the Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority will not recognize a Jewish state. They had an opportunity for a state in 1948, in 2000, in 2005, in 2008, and they turned it down each time. Why? Because it would require them to say the struggle is over, and there are two states, one Jewish, one Arab, and they live within internationally recognized and secure borders. But whether it's the Palestinian Authority or Hamas, they would both rather maintain the struggle than have their own state. So the Palestinians have no interest in a two-state solution. The Israelis, it just makes it all problematic. They can't have an interest in a two-state solution because there's no one to negotiate with. There's no one to create a state with. The only ones who want a two-state solution are the Biden administration. But let's assume for a moment that the two-state solution is even viable. Why then extend this policy of no longer supporting technology in East Jerusalem and Golan Heights? The Golan Heights have absolutely nothing to do with the Palestinian state. The Israelis captured the Golan Heights in 1967 from the Syrians. The Syrians were in the Golan Heights, were occupying the Golan Heights after the 1948 War of Israeli Independence, when the UN passed its partition plan, creating two states, one Jewish, one Arab, that the Arabs rejected and then attacked Israel in an effort to destroy it. Syria captured the Golan. So the Israelis in 1967 got the Golan back. Who are the Israelis supposed to give the Golan back to? Currently, Bashar al-Assad, who is a war criminal, is the president of Syria. Significant portions of Syria are occupied by ISIS. In fact, American troops, one of whom was my son at one time, are in Syria fighting ISIS. Assad is an ally of Iran. Assad is an ally of Russia. So this idea that the Israelis are supposed to negotiate with Assad, the Ayatollah, or Putin, the whole idea is crazy. There is a final status of the Golan. It belongs to Israel, period, end of sentence. The Trump administration, to its credit, recognized that. Whatever happened to America giving its word? We should live by it. The idea that the Israelis are going to negotiate the Golan or to give something away in exchange for keeping the Golan is preposterous. We're just not going to do it. The Israelis should not do it. It is decided. It belongs to Israel. Jerusalem, similarly, under the UN partition plan, Jerusalem was supposed to be an international city. In the 1948 war, when the Arabs attacked Israel, Israel successfully took over West Jerusalem, and the Arabs, Jordan, took East Jerusalem. The city was divided. It was supposed to be an international city. Unlike today, where peoples of all religion can go to Jerusalem and freely pray, whether you're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, at the holy sites in East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem, the Jordanians partitioned Jerusalem and would not allow Jews to go to Jerusalem to pray. They were not allowed in. So you had partition. Now anyone can go. And it's interesting to note that Jordan is given sovereignty and control over the Temple Mount. That's the portion over the Western Wall, the holiest place in the Jewish world, and the Temple Mount, which is the third holiest in the Muslim world, behind Mecca and Medina. So there are other ways to achieve arrangements with the Palestinians without creating a two-state solution. So why is Biden doing this? He's doing it for one reason. It's for domestic politics. The radical left hates Israel. The radical left, for the most part, is anti-Semitic. So for his base in 2024, he uses Israel as an instrument to get his radical base motivated to show up and vote for him. What better way to do it than to attack the Israelis? Stand up to them about Jerusalem. Stand up to them about the Palestinians. Confirm in their minds that Israel is a colonial, apartheid, occupying country, oppressing its people of color. It's a bunch of garbage. It is ahistorical, but that is the nonsense that's being peddled. So in essence, what they have mainstreamed and made American policy is the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement, which is everyone recognizes as being anti-Semitic. That interesting, going back to their prior conversation, that Ben and Jerry jumped on that bandwagon when they stopped selling ice cream in the West Bank. Interestingly, though, they kept selling it in the Golan. So not even Ben and Jerry's buys into this garbage. But this is all motivated by domestic politics. It helps Iran. It helps Russia. It helps Syria. It undermines Israel. It undermines our Gulf Arab partners. It betrays, it gives the Palestinians false hope that one day they may be able to sever off portions of Jerusalem. It's just an ineffective foreign policy. But for domestic policy, for Joe Biden, it's all about Joe Biden.
Jesse.
I was just reading through this essay. It's absolutely amazing.
Isn't that a brilliant essay?
I'm sorry?
It's just brilliant.
Thank you.
It is. It's absolutely. And so actually, instead of commenting on it, I'd actually like to get more information from you with your expertise on this. Is from a political point of view, I understand why Biden is doing this. I never understood, for political purposes and capturing the far left progressives and such who are anti-Semitic. But where is Schumer on this? How can Schumer sit here and allow this to progress? He has been supposedly a champion of Israel during his career as a local elected official, as a member of Congress, and now the majority leader in the U.S. Senate. It's unconscionable to me that, number one, this is that those Jewish Americans that are voters here do not see this as an attack on their homeland and an attack on their people, an attack of their way of life, and would continue to support the political party that does this. And I say that because Schumer has been silent on this. Until your essay was sent to me, I did not know that this had gone on, quite frankly. So I don't understand it. But I guess I should not be surprised, because if I'm not mistaken, when the Obama administration was negotiating the Iran deal, he was silent on the Iran deal until he found out that Congress would not have to take a vote on it. And that's when he gave some tepid type of commentary on the Iran deal for the purposes of politics. I just don't see, and I don't understand, why the Democratic Party and the last two Democratic administrations have switched foreign policy here in the United States and have become basic enemies. We're not even neutral. They're enemies of the only democracy in the Middle East and our only true ally in the Middle East, in Israel. So going back to it, where is Schumer on this, and why should his phones and his email and his tweet inbox not be filled with asking the same question? How can you let the Biden administration do this, and what are you doing to stop it?
Well, Chuck Schumer's about one thing. Chuck Schumer. So during the Obama years, when he was shifting from an Israel-centered American Middle East policy to an Iranian-centered Middle East policy, because he internationalized the social justice movement and, as part of the radical left, viewed Israel as a colonial, apartheid, occupying power, oppressing its people of color that needs to be punished, along with Iran, which was victimized in the 1950s when the United States, in his view, backed a coup, overthrowing the quote-unquote democratically elected government of Mossadegh to being replaced by the Shah. America had to atone for its sins, and we all remember the Obama apology tour, where America had to atone for all the horrible things that it did, one of which was overthrowing Mossadegh and putting in the Shah. And the way to atone for that sin is the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. And that's why you see this huge shift, this ideological shift in the Middle East. Chuck Schumer, who at the time when the Iran deal was being negotiated was scared witless that AOC would primary him, decided that he had to sprint to the left to keep the woke left in the Democratic Party off his back. He had to shift left. And that's part of the reason why it was so devastating when Donald Trump went to Georgia and caused us to lose 2 Senate seats in Georgia, making Schumer the majority leader. He helped now advance that radical left-wing agenda because Schumer, he's anything but stupid, recognizes how the party has shifted. And if he wants to be the majority leader of a radical left party, he has to be radical left. And that's why he's adopting all these positions. Now, the Biden administration, no interesting slip of the tongue. It really is a third Obama administration. The Biden administration is filled with Obama retreads, not the least of whom is Robert Malley, who was part of the original JCPOA negotiations during the Obama administration, has now the Iran portfolio, who recently had his security clearance revoked. But no one will tell us why. It's really interesting. We should know if Malley has leaked intelligence to the Iranians about either Israeli capabilities, an Israeli attack, or maybe even in American capabilities.
Wasn't there a time, allegedly, when Israel was looking to possibly make an attack that was leaked from the Obama administration?
Right. In 2012, there was a lot of buzz about the possibility of an Israeli attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities out of Azerbaijan, which is the only country in the world that borders both Iran and Russia, interestingly enough. And the reason Azerbaijan is a very interesting country because it is a majority Shiite Muslim country. And the Azerbaijanis represents roughly 30 to 35% culturally of Iranian population. And there's a lot of belief that much of the great Israeli intelligence that the Israelis get in Iran comes through cooperation with the Azerbaijanis, who is it's secular. So that's why the Iranians are enemies of Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is so concerned about the Iranians, the radical Islamic clerics in Tehran. But there was a thought that the Israelis were going to attack in 2012, and that Obama leaked American intelligence to warn the Iranians in order to thwart the Israeli attack. So perhaps Malley, who was so inspired by his mentor Barack, perhaps maybe he leaked that information to the Iranians. But unlike Obama, who would have the power to declassify information, Malley has no such power. And he may have committed an act of treason. He may have committed, an act in a violation of the Espionage Act. But in typical Biden fashion, no one is talking. We can't get any answers. This is something the House really should be focusing on, and the IG should be making a very serious investigation of.
Well, you raised the interesting question, and Jesse and I have been talking about this, and with you over the times we've been together. I'm just amazed at the obsession of Obama and Biden and the people around them to constantly negotiate with Iran to give more and more away at the risk of American security, when the mobs are chanting death to America, death to Israel. Why we don't take that seriously? Why we don't take seriously the fact that nuclear-armed Iran will use nuclear weapons, and why we're not doing everything possible to stop them from having that. And has been pointed out by Jesse and Eric previously, the fact of the matter is the so-called Iran deal, which Schumer went into tank on, even though he voted the other way.
He waited until Obama had the votes.
He made sure that Obama had the votes to get it pushed through, and then he voted against it so he could go back to his constituents in law and say, look, I opposed it, but I couldn't win. The fact is he should have been fighting like hell to stop it in the first place. And the second point...
Like Bob Menendez.
Right. And let's be very clear. That was a deal, was a treaty. It should not have ever gone through. It should have been a treaty subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. They did it wrongfully, unconstitutionally. They're trying to do it again by calling it something else other than a treaty. They could call it an ishkabibble, but it is a treaty. They want to give, again, tens and hundreds of billions of dollars back. What do you think Iran is going to do with that money, to the risk of American interests and Arab interests?
We know what they do with the money.
Terrorism.
They got hundreds of billions of dollars, and what have they done with it? They've given it to the IRGC, and who trains a terrorist network around the world, and including attacking Americans.
Attacking Americans. They've had hit squads come to the United States of America and into Europe to try to kill their enemies.
Ask Mike Pompeo and John Bolton why they have armed guards and Secret Service coverage today. It's because the Iranians have a fatwa out for them because they were opposed to the Iran nuclear deal. So the Iranians, either directly or through their proxies, have engaged in over 80 attacks against American service members in Syria and Iraq. What has the Biden administration done? There have been no more than 4 meaningless token attacks against worthless jihadis somewhere in Syria and Iraq. Nothing inside Iran. This money is used to attack Americans. It's used to make drones that are sent to Russia to kill Ukrainians. And it's sent to the territories to train Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist organizations in Jenin and Gaza to kill Israelis. That's what this money is for.
All right. We're going to take a break. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and esteemed essayist, political commentator, and attorney Eric Levine. We'll be back in a moment with more interesting conversation on Let the Record Show.
This is Let the Record Show.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed essayist, attorney, political commentator Eric Levine, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse, there's a wonderful article, or a scary article, depending on your perspective, or it could be both scary and wonderful, because it was so insightful and really raising the concerns that all three of us have had about the Chinese threat to America. But what Gordon in this essay in Gatestone said, in essence, was this. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Chinese are coming in, military-age people, and they're not coming in as escapees from oppression. They're coming in to our country. We don't know who they are, and they're disappearing into our country. And this raises the danger of having potential saboteurs and fifth columnists in the heartland of America. And Jesse, what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's absolutely preposterous, and it's unbelievable that the Biden administration will continue to allow this on its policies, both for national security and on foreign policy. But we should not be surprised. It was President Xi who basically has assured himself a lifetime appointment as president of his Communist Party and Communist China. And he has one goal. It's the Chinese domination of a global domination by, I believe the year was 2049. And he's been undertaking this both militarily, using China's financial muscle, watching the United States, like under the Biden administration, receding from its leadership position on the global stage, and interjecting itself as a voice of reason when it's not a voice of reason. It's only for the purposes of spreading its own agenda. An example of this is proposing a peace accord between Russia and the Ukraine, which was lopsided towards Russia, which was rejected, of course, by Ukraine. But this essay is amazing, and we've spoken about some of these infiltrations before. The establishment of what we call Chinese police stations, that they use these centers for the observation and surveillance of those Chinese Americans that are here. They also use them for the purposes of recruitment, for the purposes, as you pointed out, and this essay points out, for the continued intelligence gathering and the sabotage of our society in various different institutions, educational and academic and otherwise, for the purposes of achieving their goal, basically eroding the American spirit and the American society, the great American society from within. This is something that we have to wake up to. The Chinese right now, because of the Biden administration's negligence, or they're just plain incompetence, the Biden administration is playing checkers against an entity that's playing three-dimensional chess. And we are surely losing ground, if not the entire game.
Yeah, so this is all about ideology first. It's all about the open border, isn't it? Does anybody want the Chinese to be in here to spy and be a second column, fifth column? No. But if you start trying to weed out illegal aliens who are Chinese, now all of a sudden you have to figure out who everybody is, and you have to secure the border. But you can't have it. The left doesn't want to secure the border. They want an open border. So they're prepared to sacrifice American national security for the ideological purity of having an open border. National security be damned. We see this across the board, where ideology always takes precedence over everything. The climate agenda is a perfect example. We're perfectly willing to sacrifice the American power grid, American national security, the American economy, all in the name of the climate agenda. Why? Because the socialists, it has nothing to do with the climate. It's all about taking over the energy sector of our economy. The Medicare for all, the single payer, the universality of health care for all and the way that it's implemented in Obamacare. It's not about improving health care or extending the life of Americans or making health care more affordable. It's all about government taking over the healthcare sector of the economy. It's all about socialism replacing capitalism. It's just another example of where ideology overtakes national security. The nonsense about systemic racism. America is not systemically racist. There are racists, and they should be called out, and they should be stamped out, and racism should be fought everywhere we can fight it. But America is not systemically racist. But why do we have it? It's all to support the social justice movement, which is about what? It's about a redistribution of wealth. Ideology ahead of national security, ahead of economic security. These are ideological movements that require ideological purity. And in order to do that, they're prepared to sacrifice anything else.
Well, what we're really talking about is you have a a Marxist agenda, and also it's a vision that capitalism is evil. The United States is not the greatest hope of mankind for a free
it's systemically racist. We're an inherently evil country.
And so what they've done is they've decided that the whole vision is statism. All economic decisions come out of what the communists used to call the 5-year plans.
Because they know better. Those groups, they know
that's
better.
Right. They're the elite. They will tell us what to do, and we better get in line. And if we don't get in line and say electric cars are the greatest things in sliced bread,
then you're a racist.
Then you're a racist, and you're against the environment. And
you're a misogynist. And you're a bigot.
Right. So it's all about...
You're a homophobe. You're an Islamophobe.
Right. It's all about ad hominem personal attacks instead of getting to the merits. Can we have electric cars? You want an electric car? Go out and buy it. But don't tell me I can't get an electric car. Don't tell me that fossil fuel is the enemy of mankind, because fossil fuels are and natural gas are things that make a quality of life good for everybody. If you honestly believe that we're going to get all the energy we need from the sun and from wind, you're smoking funny cigarettes, which, by the way, they've legalized smoking funny cigarettes, at least on the state level, and it's free to sell it, and the government is in the business of selling it, but they can't even do a good job of selling it, so it's now become a black market industry. So all the revenues they think they're getting, they'll never get, and you have walking down the streets of our metropolitan areas, all you do is smell weed. Now, what does that do to people? It's a transition drug. It's a gateway drug to other more serious drugs. So what they're doing in every step of the way, you look at their policies, tell me how they help protect and defend this great country, how they enhance freedom of opportunity and a higher quality of life. I keep asking people, please tell me what the left wing has done to make this a better, safer, more freedom-loving country and given us all opportunities. I don't have that answer, Jesse.
They've decriminalized crime, and they have made crime defending yourself against crime.
Jesse, we've talked about that. You get on a subway and you're attacked.
Absolutely.
And what happens? And what happens if you're attacked?
You're arrested for protecting yourself or protecting your bystander or tribe rider. It's unbelievable.
You know, you're a bodega owner or you're a supermarket owner, and someone is coming and is just shoplifting you and just running you out of business because of theft, and you try to put in cameras or eye recognition, retina recognition, so you can keep people out that you know have been shoplifting and stealing from your store. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to protect yourself. And then once against violent, if you defend yourself physically, you're arrested. It's insane. But this is an example of where ideology trumps sanity. You must be ideologically poor, because if you don't have these this decriminalization of some of these normal acts that we would think are crimes, then you're a racist, because it disproportionately incarcerates certain groups of people. But you're a racist if you defend yourself or try to protect your property. It's crazy.
So let me ask you both. Are we fighting a hopeless cause? Is momentum against us? Are we doomed to become a second or third rate power because of the willingness and the plotting and scheming of the enemies of real freedom to subvert this country? I mean, Jesse, what do you think?
I don't. I never lose hope in the promise of America, and I have the utmost respect and confidence in the New York voter and the American voter. It may be tougher to get back to balance by having to go to the ballot box over and over again, and having progressive Democrats change the rules of the game that they've been losing. But I think that all you have to do is see what happened in 2022 and what happened in 2021. Those 2 years were a complete rejection of democratic policies here in the state of New York and throughout the country. But let's speak about this state first. It was a complete rejection of it. Just last year, we had the most competitive gubernatorial race in history since that of Pataki during the Pataki years. It also, where as everyone has pointed out on this radio program, it is New York that has provided the House of Representatives to be in the majority by the Republican Party, not Texas, not Florida, not any other Midwestern state. It was New York, because I do believe, and it takes time to do this, that the voters will respond, and they've done, and will rise up. We did it. We saw it in 2010 with people mobilizing against Obamacare and basically the government takeover of an industry. We see that still here in many different ways when the government tries to take over other industries, whether eliminating stoves and eliminating gas connections to construction. These are New York voters rising up against those policies. We have to be vigilant. We have to stay committed. We have to continue this fight for the American promise here in New York.
Well, there's a movie with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer and Angela Lansbury. It was called Gaslight, and it talks about the phenomenon of a husband trying to drive his wife either crazy so he could commit her, or to suicide so he could take over her property in his search for both her wealth and for a hidden catch of diamonds. And that term has now become a psychological term. It's called gaslighting. Fundamentally, it means who are you going to believe, the facts and your eyes, or the narrative, or the rhetoric. What I find absolutely insane is the Orwellian attempt to say peace is war, war is peace, good is bad. It's amazing to me, and yet, who's the hope of this country? The hope of this country is our young people, the students. And we have an academic establishment. We have the schools controlled by the unions, and they put through these wake ideologies, the critical race theory. They wanted the 1619 Project, which is endorsed by the New York Times, saying that we're a systemically racist country, we're bad people, capitalism is bad, America is a colonial power. And this is what they teach and they teach and they teach. If we're going to rely...
And this is why I'm pessimistic.
And that's why I'm pessimistic too, Jesse, because if the young don't get it and they're not willing to stand up and fight to save this country, yes, we will get through the 250th anniversary of this country. But as John Cassidy always says, are we going to get to the 300th anniversary? And that's the question.
Well, you have... The canary in the coal mine is our inability to completely stand up an army. We are way behind in people registering to join the military. And why? If you go to school and you're taught that America is not worth defending, if you're taught America is systemically racist and inherently evil and is born in slavery and has no hope for redemption, why would you want to defend it? So the military and the failure of it to meet its recruiting goals is truly a canary in the coal mine that we should be very wary of.
Well, let's take a break. This is Let the Record Show. We'll be back in a moment. Thank you.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed essayist, political commentator, and attorney Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I want to conclude today's show with raising the question of the media cover-up of the Bidens, the FBI's role in this, the Justice Department's role in this, the particular role of the Attorney General of the United States. So let me begin by saying this. Garland testified that Weiss, who's a local U.S. attorney in Delaware, had full power to make a request of other U.S. attorneys, one in California, one in District of Columbia, to pursue the influence peddling schemes and other crimes, allegedly, of young Mr. Biden, Hunter Biden, and the conduit of all that money, foreign money, which may have passed on to other members of the family, including Joe Biden. So that was one. So he testified that they could do that. And he also testified that nothing was going to stop Weiss from being totally independent. Let me make out 2 points to you. Number one, Weiss is caught in a jam here because he speaks the truth, as he did to his staff a year ago, saying he's not controlling this game. Somebody else was. Was he lying then or is he lying now? And he's clearly running interference for the Attorney General of the United States, who may be caught in a perjury trap of his own making, by the way. Okay? First rule is the Attorney General of the United States does not need the request of a U.S. attorney to be appointed special counsel, nor should Weiss, if he was turned down by the California U.S. attorney and the District of Columbia U.S. attorney, have any other path than to say to the Attorney General of the United States, you told me I have free reign, I can go to them anytime I want, but they've turned me down, do something about it. You're the Attorney General. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Eric, your thoughts on this, and then Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I think Congress obviously has a significant role in trying to get to the bottom of this, but it's going to be quite difficult because they're not going to get much, if any, cooperation from Garland and the Justice Department. So it may be necessary, actually, is for Garland, or to have a demand that Garland appoint a special prosecutor of himself. I really think that's really going to be the only way that's going to happen, because that's the only way you're going to get to the bottom of this.
Listen, Eric, Jesse and I were talking to you before about smoking funny cigarettes. I can't believe you actually do it.
Right, exactly. So he obviously won't do that. And then the House needs to impeach Garland, because we all know that if you just issue a general subpoena, it takes forever for it to be enforced. However, if there is a standing impeachment proceeding, the Supreme Court acts promptly in enforcing subpoenas. And that's probably going to be the only way we're ever going to truly get to the bottom of what has been going on here. So I am not hopeful that we're going to learn the full truth. It'd be great if we can, but I don't think we will. And I think the only way really to do that is to start an impeachment proceeding of Attorney General Garland and have the Supreme Court enforce subpoenas that they will obviously not comply with.
Jesse, your thoughts?
I think that every time that the Attorney General Garland speaks before a microphone or in front of a reporter's notebook or before Congress or the U.S. Senate, it justifies Mitch McConnell's decision as the majority leader to make sure that we prevented this political hack from getting onto the Supreme Court.
Amen
in
to
the
that.
last year of the Obama administration.
Agreed.
We're never, I agree with Eric, unless we proceed with subpoenas to the U.S. Supreme Court to get answers, I don't believe that that's going to happen. And I do agree with Eric. One of the things in terms of losing the Senate, not even at being tied, is the ability for the minority to seek subpoenas in committees, and we've lost that tool. Right now, it's a House of Representatives ball game, and they're going to have to take extraordinary measures to do that. And unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to have to do the calculus of that. If that in doing so, that assists them in increasing or maintaining their majority.
Well, let me just say the final word on this segment. Interesting column by Andy McCarthy, in which he points out that there's no way that the Jack Smith investigation and prosecution indictment of former President Trump on the document retention issue will ever be tried before 2024 November election, because the complications of the statutes and classified documents and the intermediate appeals and the discussions that have to go between the intelligence agencies about what documents to be released is going to go on and on and on. And ultimately, as Andy McCarthy points out in his column, which I thought was fascinating, ultimately the Attorney General of the United States can say to a federal judge, which I've never heard of before, it was fascinating to me to read this, that you can't turn over those documents. And if he tells the federal judge, you cannot turn over these documents, and undercuts the constitutional right of a defense by Trump, then the right thing to do for the U.S. District Court judge is then to throw out the indictment against Trump, because you cannot undermine his ability to defend himself on the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. He has a right to a defense. And it's not an answer to say these are so-called classified documents, therefore we won't give them to you. And
it wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
Right. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and this will not be resolved before 2024. That's Andy McCarthy's prediction and his analysis, and I think he's right. This has been Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with my good friend, esteemed colleague, Jesse Garcia, the chairman of the Republican Party in Suffolk County and the vice chair of the State Party, and our special guest, Eric Levine, noted attorney, political essayist, and commentator. We look forward to speaking with you again next week. May God bless America and keep you and your family safe. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced, specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tab.com.